All right, so a core concept that we're going to be talking about in this module is cycle time. And as a reminder about what cycle time is, it's how long does it take any individual piece of work to get done. So it's the time that a piece of work goes from start to finish. Now, in the beginning of this whole course, I said some stuff like, well, stop estimating and you're not going to estimate anymore. And I said, yeah, you're not going to estimate. And I said that was probably mostly accurate. But now we're to the point where I want to start adding a little bit more accuracy to, well, this comment of stop estimating. So you're probably not going to be estimating, but you're probably going to want to break your work down into manageable chunks. Some kind of standard size that the team is going to work towards to, break it down into pieces they can actually deliver. The big question is, how big should those chunks actually be? It's easy enough for me to just say, yeah, it should be 4 days or less for any piece of work. But yeah, that's probably not realistic or adequate or whatever. You really need to know a better way of figuring out how big those chunks should be. And this brings in the idea of cycle time targets. These are sometimes called service level expectations, or SLEs. Cycle time targets would be how long should it take for an average piece of work to make it through our system, for an average piece of work to get delivered. That was probably a pretty short intro to what those things are. So yeah, you're probably thinking, what are those things? But before I do that, I want to talk about apples. Apples, a well-known popular fruit that people will commonly eat. So you have a couple different options. One, you could do all in one bite as your technique. Now, it might be possible to eat that apple all in one bite. Just shove the thing right in your mouth and go to town. But doing it that way probably won't be very much fun. It probably won't be very enjoyable at all. And, well, I don't know if you're like me and you have seasonal allergies, breathing could get awfully tricky. Because if your nose is stuffed up, yeah, it's going to be hard to eat an apple in one bite because it's probably blocking most of the space in your mouth. There's also this really big downside of doing it this way, which is that there's a high risk of choking. Another technique for apple consumption is multiple bites. This is commonly referred to as the more traditional approach, where you take that apple and you take a series of bites off of them and, well, you achieve the same thing eventually, that thing being an eaten and consumed apple. And doing it this way is generally thought of as more enjoyable. It's a heck of a lot easier to chew. And if you've got that seasonal allergy problem, it's a lot easier to consume because, well, you can probably eat and breathe at the same time. If you're eating an apple all in one bite and you have seasonal allergies, you pretty much have to shove it in and you're doing that entire apple on one breath. And I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound super great to me. Another major upside of the multiple bite technique is that there's a real low risk of choking, or at least a greatly diminished risk of choking. Because, well, you're taking smaller pieces and chewing them up and swallowing them, as opposed to the urgency of trying to chew up an entire apple and swallow it all at once. There's a decent risk in that mode that you're, well, going to choke to death. 0 stars, would not recommend. So what does that have to do with, well, feature delivery? Well, I think that there's something that's quite similar. And let's think about a really big feature, like something that's pretty decently sized that you or your team is being asked to deliver. And when you go to deliver that thing, you kind of think about it and you got a best guess that it's 30 to 40 days worth of work. Now you could just say, yep, we're going to do that pile of work and we're going to do it all at once. That's like shoving the whole apple in your mouth. And much like shoving the whole apple in your mouth, you might successfully chew it up and swallow it. Or, in the case of the giant feature, you might even successfully deliver it. But there are some big feature delivery risks. One, I want to make sure that I get good feedback quickly, and it's going to be a long time before you have something that's probably feedbackable, something you can show off and get some meaningful feedback on. It's also going to take an awfully long time from start to finish, a long time before that thing is done. And if you're having trouble delivering, that gigantic 30 to 40 day feature, you might not realize that you're actually having trouble for a really long time. And there's a high risk of delivering the wrong thing or delivering nothing. Not to mention the fact that it's probably not a whole lot of fun to try to deliver a 30 to 40 day feature all in one go. There are also big communication and status problems that come with that big feature. and trying to deliver it all at once. And it's, well, somebody's asking you when you're going to get your stuff. And yeah, how do you communicate status about that? And if you've got 30 to 40 days worth of development you have to do, it's going to be not done for most of that time. And if you're being responsible and you're being honest with yourself, you probably, well, you should be thinking about done as true or false. Either it's all done or it's not done. That earned value thing where somebody says it's 80% done, that never really works out very well because you're probably thinking optimistic percent dones and not good. So when people come and ask you how's that feature coming along, you want to be able to answer that question. And if it's 30 to 40 days of time to develop that thing, then it's going to be hard to say how it's actually coming along. The responsible answer is it's not done, and it's going to be not done for 30 to 40 days. Most customers find that pretty unsatisfying. So that big feature delivery is pretty darn similar to the single byte Apple consumption. But let's think about breaking that feature into smaller chunks. So you take the big, gigantic 30 to 40 day feature and you start breaking it into smaller pieces. These pieces are going to be a heck of a lot easier to understand, a whole lot easier to manage, and a whole lot easier to deliver. There's also a lot less risk attached to it. When you're delivering gradually, you're paying your risk down in smaller chunks. It's also a lot easier to communicate status on this feature. So how's this feature coming along? You're not trying to answer it for something that takes 30 to 40 days. You're trying to answer it for whatever that small piece of that feature is that you're trying to work on. And as you're delivering smaller pieces of that overall large feature, you have something that's feedbackable, something you can show to your customers, your bosses, your stakeholders, and get their feedback. You can get that feedback a lot faster. It's not 30 to 40 days. And not only do you get faster feedback, but you also get shorter time to delivery. So you're delivering little chunks of done much, much faster, which, thinking about customer relationship management, that makes them happier. Customers love to see little bits of done stuff showing up on their desk or in their inbox or however they track it. Give them little bits of done every couple of days or every week. You're going to have much happier customers.